I got Snapchat a little later than the rest of my peers. I didn't really see the point of sending pictures that only lasted a couple of seconds before they disappear forever. It seemed silly and trivial to me. But after consistent badgering, my best friend managed to persuade me to download it so that she could send me funny pictures in class. Even then, I rarely used it unless I was really bored, since I only had a few friends on there. A couple of weeks after getting the app, a new name appeared on my list of friends. I didn't remember adding anyone, and it wasn't a name that I recognized, so I was confused as to how they had been added. I sent them a message asking, "Who is this?" I figured it was just someone from my class who had found my username from one of my friends, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't some stranger. The thing with Snapchat was there was no kind of censoring. People could send you anything without consequences, since proof of it would vanish as soon as the picture disappeared. Shadowstalker193 opened the message a few seconds later, and I waited for a reply. Instead of a message, they sent me a picture. I was wary of opening it, but I figured I could simply click off of it if it was anything disturbing, and then block them from sending anything else. With a faint flutter of anticipation in my chest, I opened the image. It was nothing but a black screen, but fuzzy around the edges, as though someone was covering the camera with their finger. It lasted 5 seconds before disappearing. I rolled my eyes and sent a reply. Okay? That still doesn't tell me who you are. Becca, is this you? You're not funny, you know. My messages went unanswered after that, and I figured it was probably just one of my friends messing with me. Just to be safe though, I blocked the user from being able to send me anything else. I ended up completely pushing it out of my mind and forgetting about it, until a couple of days later, when my phone pinged with a notification. It was after school, and I was waiting at the bus stop with a couple of other students. I dug my phone out of my pocket and saw that I had a new Snapchat alert. Shadowstalker193 sent you a snap. I frowned. I thought I had blocked this user from being able to send me messages. Had I not done it properly? The wind picked up, blowing my hair against my cheek as my finger hovered over open. What had they sent me this time? Another dark, blurry photograph of nothing. Bracing myself, I pressed the notification. The picture only lasted a few seconds, but I saw enough of it to know who it was. It was a photo of me, standing at the bus stop, exactly where I was now. With the start, I dragged my gaze away from my phone and looked around, but nobody was looking at me. Who had taken this picture? With a frustrated sigh, I sent a reply. Seriously, who is this? Another picture popped up. Me frowning down at my phone. Whoever Shadowstalker193 was, they were here right this second, taking photos of me across the street. But when I looked up, there was nobody there. Judging from the angle and the closeness, they should have been within sight. But the only people around me were other students, and none of them seemed to be the culprit. Shaking my head, I went to Shadowstalker193's profile and deleted them from my friends list. Now they shouldn't be able to send me any more messages. I cast another wary look around, a shiver of unease creeping down my spine. The thought of someone I didn't know taking photos of me was enough to make me nervous. I'd hoped it was just one of my friends playing a prank on me, but I doubted they would take it this far without revealing themselves. Shoving my phone back into my pocket, I was relieved when the bus crested the hill and I followed the other students on board. The door slid shut, and we were just about to set off when my phone buzzed again. Shadowstalker193 sent you a snap. I choked out a gasp. What the heck? Hadn't I just deleted them? With a trembling hand, I opened the app and clicked on their name. The photo that came up was a blurred picture of me sitting by the window in the bus. I quickly glanced down the street before the bus pulled away, but there was nobody there. I continued to receive pictures from Shadowstalker193 over the next few days. I told my friends about it, but all of them denied being involved. And I had no reason to doubt them. Whoever was messing with me, it wasn't someone I knew. No matter how many times I blocked them or deleted them from my friends list, they were still able to send me messages. Each picture was of me, walking my dog through the park, standing outside the school, even one of my dad and I at the grocery store. They were clearly stalking me, but I had no proof of it since the pictures only lasted a few seconds, disappearing in a heartbeat. I tried to ignore the notifications, but they would send more until I gave in and opened them, each photo closer and clearer than before. Yet whenever I looked around for the culprit, there was nobody. Nobody on their phones, nobody looking at me, nobody acting suspicious. I was running out of options. In the end, I deleted the app completely. If blocking didn't work, then this was the only way to stop Shadow Stalker 193 from being able to send me messages. Or so I thought. That night, I woke up to my phone pinging against the nightstand. Groggily, I checked the time. It was a little after 3 o'clock in the morning. Who would be messaging me at this hour? As soon as I unlocked the phone, my heart plummeted into my stomach. Shadow Stalker 193 has sent you a snap. How is this possible? I deleted the app from my phone. How could it have reinstalled itself? I sat up in bed, my breaths tumbling out in short, sharp gasps as I clicked the message. There were 3 new pictures. The first one took me a second to recognize in the dim lighting. It was my street, under the cover of night. The second picture was similar, a view of my house from the neighbor's fence. The third one made my blood run cold. It was a photo of my house, from the front, aglow in the moonlight. Taken 48 seconds ago. Did this mean... I threw back my covers and leapt up from the bed, stalking over to the window. I dragged open the curtains and peered out. A second later, from directly across the street, came the flash from a camera. I instantly ducked down below the window, my heart pounding in my chest, fear settling in my bones. They were outside my house. Freaking out, I ran to my dad's room like I was a kid afraid of a nightmare. I shook him awake with frantic movements, and he sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Amy," he mumbled, staring at me through the dimness. "Has something happened?" They're outside," I blurted. "They're outside the house. The one who's been taking pictures of me. They're out there right now." That seemed to jolt him awake, and he scrambled out of bed, telling me to stay inside while he went to investigate. I ran back to my room, huddling under the covers while I waited for my dad to come back. Why was this happening to me? Who were they? This creep watching me from the shadows, unseen, unheard, invading my life like this. I heard footsteps across the hallway and waited for my dad to appear. He didn't. Instead, my phone pinged with another notification. I wanted to ignore it, to throw my phone out the window and hope that it broke. But instead, I opened Snapchat and checked the last message from Shadow Stalker 193. The air around me stilled as I opened it, dread settling like rock in my stomach. The picture was of me, sitting on my bed in semi-darkness. My dad burst into the room just as my scream filled the air. He didn't hesitate, rushing to my side, fear etched across his face. "Sweetie, what's wrong?" he asked, scanning the room for any intruders. I pointed at the doorway, still trembling with terror. "Someone's outside, Dad. They took a picture of me." My voice quivered. Dad's eyes narrowed as he moved closer to the window, but there was no one there. He turned back to me, his expression perplexed. "I don't see anyone, Amy. Are you sure you're not imagining things?" Dad reached for my phone, scrolling through the recent messages. Shadow Stalker 193's latest image was still there, a chilling reminder of the intruder in our home. We both stared at the haunting photo of me sitting on my bed. Then, suddenly, my dad's eyes widened with realization. He was a computer engineer by profession. He turned to me, a mix of fear and urgency in his voice. "Amy, this isn't a regular Snapchat account. It's using other people's phone cameras to take these photos." My heart raced as I tried to comprehend what he meant. What? How is that possible? He grabbed my phone and quickly went into the app settings. After a few moments, he found something that made his face go pale. "Your Snapchat account isn't the only one logged in." I stared at him, unable to process the implications. "What do you mean?" "Someone else has access to your phone," Dad said, his voice strained. "They're not just using Snapchat. They're controlling your camera, your notifications, everything. And similarly, They were controlling other people's phones as well. A shiver of horror ran down my spine. But how? Dad's expression darkened. We have to figure that out, Amy. We need to trace this person. Stop them from invading your privacy. As we began our investigation, it became clear that we were dealing with a sophisticated hacker who had infiltrated my phone, turning it into a tool for their malicious intent. Not visible to me, several images showed up on my phone. Images of strangers, guys and girls. Some of the images I couldn't even look at with my dad being there beside me. Our quest to unmask Shadowstalker 193 took unexpected turns, revealing secrets we never could have anticipated. While we were determined to unveil the identity of the stalker, with the help of the cops, we discovered that Shadowstalker 193 was not just one person, but a group of hackers, each with their own chilling agenda. They weren't just after me, they had targeted others as well. Unmasking them would prove to be an even more daunting task than we had ever imagined. It has been 6 months since this incident, and none of the hackers have been caught so far. While I was in college, I got a job at a 24-hour fast food joint called the Grill Shack. The place was fairly popular with kids, and it could get pretty busy at weekends, but it wasn't such a bad place to work. I was always placed on the front as a waitress, instead of in the back where the kitchens were, so I didn't have to deal with the grimy, overheated grills. I'd been there for almost 3 months when I got asked to do my first night shift. I would have turned it down since I had classes the next day, but they offered me double pay, and I was desperate for money, so I ended up accepting. Stupidly, I never thought to ask why the pay would be double just for working the night shift. I figured it was just because of the late hours, but given that it didn't seem like the kind of place that would be busy overnight, double did seem a bit excessive. I turned up just before 11 p.m. for my shift and was surprised to find the place empty, since I was used to seeing it so packed during the day. I was on shift with another coworker, Hannah, who I had only met a couple times before and didn't know too well. She was in the kitchens at the back when I went through to put my stuff away. "Hey," I said, trying to strike up a conversation. She shot me a brief nod before going back to grilling burgers, so I shrugged it off and went to the staff room. After tying my hair back and putting on my apron, I headed out the front to keep watch over the restaurant. About an hour later, Hannah came out of the kitchens, her jacket slung over her elbow. "I'm off." I stared at her. "What, already?" She looked at me oddly. "Yeah, I've grilled enough patties to keep you going. You just gotta warm them up when someone comes in. Maybe add a couple extra toppings." "I'm here on my own?" I asked, my voice tentative. Hannah nodded slowly. "I thought you were told all this." I shook my head. "Nobody told me anything. Just to get here at 11 p.m. Hannah bit her lip, a strange expression on her face that I couldn't quite discern. "You'll be fine," she finally said, looking away from me. "Just make sure you stay out front. And if you hear anything at the drive-thru, ignore it." Before I could ask what she meant, she strode through the front doors, leaving them swinging shut in her wake. I stared after her, an unsettling feeling in my gut. What did she mean if I heard anything at the drive-thru? It was always closed after 10 p.m., so I hadn't expected any customers there anyway. I shrugged off her warning, reminding myself I was getting paid double. Admittedly, I hadn't expected to be left here on my own the whole night, but I would get through it. It didn't seem like the place would get that busy anyway. The clock ticked noiselessly on the wall as the night wore on. At just past 1:30, a couple of truckers came in, so I heated up the burgers that Hannah had prepared and kept an eye on them through the window. It was tough doing everything myself, but the guys were patient and polite enough, so I didn't mind. I waved them off a short while later and settled back into the eerie stillness of the restaurant at 2 a.m. Outside, it was pitch dark. I could barely see anything through the windows, and I could hear nothing but the wind scratching through the trees. I almost jumped when my phone buzzed from my apron pocket, and I pulled it out. "Mark's coming in to help at 4 a.m. Until then, remember what I said. Hannah." I wasn't sure how Hannah had managed to get my number, but I was grateful for the reassurance. Only 2 more hours and I wouldn't be on my own anymore. Still, I found it weird that she had to remind me of her words. If you hear anything at the drive-thru, ignore it. What exactly had she meant by that? I decided not to think too much about it and went to the storeroom to grab a mop. I figured I might as well make myself useful, and it would make the time go quicker until the next customer arrived. I was in the midst of mopping up grime and grease from the linoleum at the front of the restaurant when the air suddenly went very cold. Almost like the doors were open, letting in the night chill. But when I checked, they were closed. I shivered, wearing only a short-sleeved shirt under my apron, goosebumps appearing along my arms and neck. Had the heating shut off or something? Frowning, I leaned the mop against the wall and headed back towards the kitchen. I was about to check the thermostat when I heard it. The soft crackle of static coming from the drive-thru speakers. My heart instantly dropped to my stomach as Hannah's warning echoed through my head. If you hear anything at the drive-thru. Was there a fault with the speakers or something? I shook my head. Just ignore it, like Hannah said. Just ignore it. The static grew louder, filling the restaurant's kitchen, and I turned around to look at the drive-thru windows on the other side of the room. It was too dark to properly see anything out there. But just for a second, I thought I glimpsed a shadow standing by the window. When I looked again, it was gone, and I told myself I had simply imagined it. All at once, the static stopped, and the kitchen went quiet again. I breathed a sigh of relief. Just a malfunction after all. The second the thought crossed my mind, the speakers crackled again, and a voice came through. It was nothing but a whisper, barely audible over the grainy, muffled audio, but it sounded male. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I stared at the windows again. Was something out there? Is anyone there? The voice whispered, speaking in soft, strangled bursts. Is anyone there? I stood frozen in place, hardly knowing what to do. Hannah had told me to ignore it, but was this what she meant? Maybe it was just someone messing around, playing a prank. But something about the voice, the way it was speaking, gave me the chills. My breath quickened as I stood there, the eerie voice repeating its haunting question, each word more desperate than the last. My trembling hands clenched the edge of the counter, and I strained to see through the inky blackness outside. The drive-thru windows remained empty, devoid of any signs of life. Ignoring the voice was becoming increasingly difficult. My phone vibrated in my pocket, startling me once again. Another message from Hannah. Don't listen to it. Don't answer. It's not real. I bit my lip, torn between fear and curiosity. If it wasn't real, why was my heart racing so violently? Why did my skin crawl as if 1,000 unseen eyes were fixed upon me? The voice outside grew more desperate, its whisper clawing at my sanity. Please, I need help. Please, is anyone there? It sounded like the voice of a man in agony, like a trapped soul pleading for salvation. As much as I wanted to heed Hannah's warning and maintain my silence, I couldn't resist the overwhelming dread pulling me toward the speaker. With trembling fingers, I reached for the intercom button, ready to shatter the silence. But then, a vision flashed before my eyes. It was Hannah's face, twisted in terror, her lips forming silent words. An indescribable horror overtook her features, and her eyes were wide with panic. That image was enough to stay my hand, to remind me that something was deeply wrong about all of this. The voice outside became frantic, its words devolving into incoherent pleas, as if it sensed my hesitation. Please, 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 help me! I backed away from the intercom, feeling the icy grip of fear tighten around my chest. The voice continued to call out into the void, its words more desperate, more unsettling. It grew louder, more insistent, as if it could feel my resistance. Just as I was about to surrender to the temptation, the restaurant's front door swung open, and a burst of frigid air rushed in. Mark, as Hannah had mentioned in her message, had arrived early. He looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. Then, at the drive-thru speaker, "Listen," he whispered. "Don't ever answer it. It's not what it seems." I nodded, grateful for the reinforcement, but the unsettling presence outside lingered, the voice growing angrier and more deranged. The night had become a canvas of horror, and I knew that whatever was out there was far from human. I live in Utah, so most of the families in my neighborhood are Mormon. They're all really friendly, but I'm not part of the church, so I always feel like an outsider. I drink and have tattoos, and even though people are nice to my face, I can tell that most of my neighbors don't really accept me. I don't want to move though, because I have a pretty good job, and it's a beautiful area. I just wish it were easier to make friends. The couple who lived next door were probably the most outwardly mean to me, Seth and Brittany. They were both tall, blonde, and very good looking. Aside from me, they were the only other people in our neighborhood who didn't have any kids. When I first moved in, I figured we'd get along well. Brittany even came over and dropped off a housewarming meatloaf. But almost instantly, I knew they didn't like me. Brittany took one look at the tattoos on my arms and shielded her eyes, as if she'd just seen me naked. I assumed she rushed back to her house and told Seth that the Antichrist had moved in next door, because that evening, I got an email from my new homeowners association listing off all the problems with my house. I knew that Brittany and Seth were the ones who complained about me, and it wasn't even my fault. I just moved in. All the problems with the house existed before I got there. That didn't matter though. Thanks to them, I had to spend hundreds of dollars fixing up my shutters and porch, even though no one had any problems with the house when the previous owner was there. A few weeks later, Seth invited me to their house for a barbecue, and I figured it was their attempt to bury the hatchet. I told him I'd come. It was in the middle of July, so it was very hot. But when I got there, Seth handed me a long sleeve sweater to wear so that no one would have to see my tattoos. I told him point blank that I wasn't going to wear it, and he told me to leave. After that, I heard from our other neighbors that Seth had lied about what happened and told everyone that I'd show up drunk to his house and he had to kick me out before anyone else saw. I tried to let everyone know what really happened, but I was still the outsider. Everyone believed Seth over me. After that, I tried to avoid them. They kept complaining to the homeowners association about me, including all the times I supposedly walked around naked in my own home with all the windows open. That was a lie, of course, but people still didn't believe me. I hated them, I honestly did. And the worst part was that there was nothing I could do about it until last month when my brother Andrew came for a visit. Andrew is a few years younger than me, and he's always been kind of the wild child in our family. He arrived at my house right when Seth and Brittany were leaving theirs. He took one look at them and his face dropped. It was like he saw a ghost or something. I pulled him inside, and then he instantly burst out laughing. He asked me if those were the neighbors that I always complained about, and I said that they were. They were the perfect golden couple that saw me as the biggest screw-up in the world. "Just wait till you see this," he said. He pulled his laptop out of his backpack and connected to my Wi-Fi. Then, he went to his OnlyFans account. I told him that I didn't want to see any of the adult videos that he watched, but that didn't stop him. He clicked on one of the accounts that he followed, and there on his screen, I saw Seth and Brittany dressed up like superheroes. "What the hell?" I asked. "Do they post adult videos online?" "Nope," he said. "That's just it. They don't do anything. That's why I subscribed to their account, because they're so cringe. Here, watch this." He clicked on one of their videos, and I saw Seth and Brittany in their superhero costumes tap dancing to country music. Then he clicked on another video, and I saw them sword fighting with their stuffed animals. The next video showed them talking to the camera about the best way to wash laundry, and the next one was them rubbing each other's feet. Andrew was right. This was the cringiest thing I'd ever seen. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't funny. There was absolutely no reason why they were wearing superhero costumes at all. It was just awful. And they had hundreds of subscribers. I knew I could use this to my advantage, but I also knew that I couldn't just share their OnlyFans link to our other neighbors. No one would click on it. I had to do something more drastic. So that night, I invited Seth and Brittany over to my house for dinner. They didn't want to come, but they were too outwardly polite to say no. As the three of us sat down to eat and Brittany kept complaining about how terrible my food was, Andrew snuck over to their house. Their door was unlocked because no one locks their doors in our neighborhood. He snuck into their bedroom where they filmed most of their videos and started messing with their camera. My brother is kind of an idiot, but he's amazing with technology. He works with audio-visual equipment for his job, so he had all the equipment he needed. It only took him 10 minutes, and then he came back and joined us for the rest of our dinner. The next day, I invited all our neighbors over for a big outdoor barbecue. I scheduled it for 5 o'clock because I knew that was when Seth and Brittany went live for their Friday stream. Because of that, they were the only people in our neighborhood who didn't show up. Everyone else was there. My brother set up a giant projector in my backyard, and once everyone arrived, he turned it on. Instead of streaming directly to OnlyFans, Seth and Brittany's video was projected directly onto my screen. Everyone could see them dressed up in their costumes and rubbing each other's feet. I didn't say anything. I just let the video speak for itself. The entire neighborhood freaked out, but they were all too polite to leave. So we had our barbecue and everyone awkwardly tried to ignore the video that was playing in the background. I don't know who went over to their house first, but someone must have told them about what happened, because that night, Seth came knocking on my door demanding to know what I'd done. All I said was that I found them online and that I was their biggest fan. They moved away a week later. I still haven't made friends with a lot of the other neighbors. They all think I went too far, but that's okay. I can live with that.
When Jackson got sick, my wife and I had no idea what to do. He'd always been a healthy baby. He never cried, he never got sick, and he had more energy than anyone I'd ever met. By the time he turned 14, though, I started to notice that he wasn't running around as much as before. His grades dropped, he was always out of breath, and his skin was turning pale. Sarah thought everything was okay, and the doctors couldn't find anything wrong, but I knew in my heart that something bad was happening with our boy. After a few years of Jackson getting sicker and sicker, we finally took him to a better hospital outside the city. They knew right away that his kidneys were failing. We'd waited too long to ask for help. I'll never forget the look on Dr. Klein's face when he gave us the bad news. Jackson would need a transplant, or he wouldn't reach his 19th birthday. Sarah and I did all the tests to see if we were matches, but we weren't so lucky. Jackson was adopted, and neither of us could donate. Dr. Klein explained that they'd put him on an organ donor waiting list, but there was no guarantee that a donor would come forward in time. Because he wasn't a minor anymore, his birthday was 2 weeks before Jackson wouldn't be given priority. We might get lucky, but there was also a chance that we might lose our son forever. Sarah was inconsolable. She couldn't stop crying. I had to deliver the news to our son, and I had to keep our household going, keep everything in order, because Sarah wasn't fit to do anything. Jackson was a senior now, but he was too weak to finish off the school year. He started taking online classes. It was honestly the worst week of my life, and I very quickly got desperate. My brother Sam came over to check in on us and drop off some food. While Sarah and Jackson were eating, he pulled me into the other room and said he had a plan. He was always on the internet, and he knew about people that could help us. He was talking about the dark web. At first, I couldn't imagine resorting to something like that, something dangerous and illegal, but he convinced me that it was the only way. The system wasn't working for us, so I had to do something drastic. Sam explained that he could help, but we both decided that no one else could find out. So the next day, while Sarah was with Jackson at the hospital, Sam and I got on his laptop and found an unnamed organization that promised to solve all our problems. In a private chat room, we talked with someone with the username Liverheart. Whoever this Liverheart was, he answered all my questions. And for the first time since Jackson's diagnosis, I felt hopeful. He said that I could bring Jackson to a warehouse outside of town and they'd perform the operation. All I needed to do was send him Jackson's medical records plus a small payment. I asked him how much money he needed, and he said $30,000. It was a lot of money, but I knew I could dip into my personal account. Liverheart gave me directions to transfer everything into crypto and send it to him as soon as possible. I gave him the medical records, and he got back to me that they already had a match. Sam worried that this was too good to be true, even though this was his idea in the first place, but I couldn't say no. After all, we'd waited too long to help Jackson before, and I wouldn't make the same mistake again. I figured out how to convert the money, and with one final moment of hesitation, I transferred the money. Instantly, Liverheart sent a single message. It was the address to the warehouse. Then, all communication stopped. I knew the risks. All my life, I'd never even gotten a speeding ticket, let alone broken a law of this magnitude. I was worried about getting caught, but I told myself it was what I needed to do to keep my boy alive. Mere minutes after I'd sent the payment and gotten the address, my phone buzzed. I thought it was Liverheart, but the call came from Sarah. I considered not answering. Sarah could have sensed from my voice that something was up, but I answered anyway. "Brad!" she screamed. "He's getting a kidney!" I gulped. She explained that the hospital had found a perfect match, and they'd be able to do the operation that day. She was talking so fast that I could barely understand her. When I hung up, Sam asked me what was wrong. I said, "Nothing's wrong. Jackson's going to be fine." The laptop was still open, so I sent one more message to Liverheart. "Thanks, but I'm pulling out of the deal." No reply. I added, "You can keep the money." Still no reply. Sam assured me that there'd be no problems. The anonymous organ dealer had gotten what he wanted, and he'd be able to use the kidney for someone else. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd done something very wrong, something I couldn't take back. I went straight to the hospital and waited for Jackson to receive his operation. Apparently, a person about his age had gotten into a car accident earlier in the day, and he'd been a perfect match for Jackson. It was a terrible situation for that poor boy, but it would save Jackson's life. Sarah and I waited for hours until the doctors came out to say that the operation had been a success. He'd stay in the hospital for a few days, and then we'd be able to take him home. Sarah opted to stay there with him, but she told me that it would be best if I waited at home. I didn't argue. When I got home that night, I noticed that the front door was unlocked. I never left my door unlocked, but maybe in the excitement of the day I'd overlooked it. I wasn't sure. I walked inside and everything seemed normal. Just in case, I checked the entire house. The whole time, my pulse was racing. I kept thinking about Liverheart. Was he angry that I canceled the deal? After checking every room in the house, I knew that I was alone. I went to my bedroom and calmed myself down. I sat on the bed. My heart was still throbbing. Then, I heard a rustle coming from under my bed. Slowly, I leaned over and looked under the bed. It was too dark to see anything, but I knew there was a movement. I jumped off the bed and stepped backward. Slowly, a man came out of the darkness. He wore a Guy Fawkes mask.
"No one cancels on me,"
he said. His voice was surprisingly high-pitched, almost like a child. Liverheart?
"We needed your son,"
he said. "But you got your money," I told him.
"Not enough,"
he replied. That's when I knew that he had never planned to help us. He was going to take my son and steal his organs, not help him. I realized that Jackson's medical records had included our home address. He must have come right over when I canceled the deal. "But you can't take him," I said.
"Stupid man,"
he told me.
"We were never going to mess with your sick, defective boy. We wanted you."
As soon as he said that, I heard footsteps behind me. 3 more men entered the room, all wearing the same masks. 2 held scalpels. 1 had a syringe of God knows what. They were surrounding me, and I knew I was going to die. I'm not a strong man, and normally I would never be able to fight off 4 grown men. But all I could think about was Jackson, about how he was going to live, about how I had to be there for him. So I used all my strength, more strength than I knew I had, to push the men aside and race out of the house. I honestly don't remember how I got out of there, but in seconds I was out of the front door, in my car, and speeding down the road. I went straight to the police station, ready to admit what I did. They sent officers to my house, but there was no sign that anyone was there. More officers went to the warehouse address, but the place was completely empty. I'm safe for now, but I know that those men are still out there, still waiting to get me alone. I don't know what to do, but at least I know that Jackson's safe. For now.